What I will say about Graham Platner is what I've said from the start about Graham Platner. The red flags were there, but these red flags were totally immaterial for the voters in Maine. And that my assessment on this was the silver lining, which is something that I tweeted, I think like right after the Graham Platner announcement or right after, like this was months in the past. And I've talked about this extensively. The silver lining always was, it seems like people are invested in a candidate that will say those things. Because the reality of the matter is, it's Graham Platner's background and his personal moral failings that did him in. But his campaign outside of that was a phenomenal campaign. That's precisely the reason why he put up insane numbers against the fucking existing centrist hand-selected candidate that is the governor of the state. That's important. That's important analysis. And I'm never going to shy away from giving you that analysis. My job is twofold. And I feel like there's been a lot of crosstalk on my perspective versus my analysis on the race and what this says about the appetite for change. Okay? Trump's 2016 campaign was good though. See, this is the problem. Why do people do this? Like, why? This is my issue. And then it like 98% of the clip compilations out there are always people making like a totally ridiculous comparison. And then me going back to Graham Platner's like policy perspectives and what that means for the overall race, what that means for races all around the country. Many of the candidates you have actually excitedly endorsed and supported and fucking door knocked for, like Maylak Giros, Chris Rabb, Claudia Elisa Avila Chevalier, Claire Valdez, candidates that I actually fucking went out, not only endorsed, but went out, fundraised for, actively campaigned alongside of, and am proud to have played a role with this community in getting elected into fucking office. Okay? Like, here's the difference. When you say something like this, of course I'm going to fucking retaliate and be like, that's a stupid argument. And then people will clip it and be like, Hassan is defending Graham Platner again. I'm not. It's very frustrating. The issues were there. It can't be all about the campaign. It can't be all about the Mainers like them. You know, I'm not shitting on the rest of your work. You do know that. Yes. Okay? In any case, can you look at Tom Tiffany smears on you after having Francesca on? I'm worried. Rural racist Wisconsin is real. I don't know who that is, but we'll look at it in a second. So I think it was one of the first tweets that I had on the Graham Platner issue was more so about like the broad appetite that people had all around the country, including in a state like Maine. That's a very old state, very white state. And I asked the question that I repeatedly asked over and over again. Does this mean that people have an appetite for the policies, or do they simply like that Graham Platner is a white guy and looks the part? And this was a question that I had for the Mainers. And that question remains to be seen, because the comparison I always made was between Platner with obvious red flags versus Abdullah Syed. So it's seeing a lot of libs defend Platner over establishment pick Janet Mills because he has a leftist platform, and it seems like they're tired of the status quo electability arguments of the Dems. Now imagine if you had a candidate who didn't have a Blackwater CV and a totem cough, okay? But many people will take the advantage, take the time out of their busy days, they're not usually doing anything else, to make it seem as though I did not have a much more scrutinized opinion on Graham Platner as opposed to many of these other candidates. And I will tell you exactly why. Okay? It's totem, not totem. Okay, whatever. I know. There's a difference that I have, a difference in opinion that I have with many of the people that don't work on these sorts of campaigns in any way, shape, or form with other candidates who will go out and maybe door knock, go out and maybe phone bank, but they're not looking at the situation with a broader vision of winning the Senate majority. There are plenty of people in this coalition in the Democratic Party that are dog shit, okay? Policy-wise, background-wise, just horrible overall. Many people that I'm not going to actively go out and endorse, but many Democratic senators, for example, that have to be a part of this coalition regardless, just to have the numbers and the seats, okay? Because at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, a Democratic representative or a Democratic senator is going to be better than a Republican one. Okay? It's that simple. And Graham Platner was no different. But to simply say that this was just a lesser evil harm reduction attitude would be also incorrect. For Graham Platner's race, what I was interested in always was the fact that he was an unashamed left populist. Now, the problem that comes along with that is that his stink and his background and the things that he did will now be slammed into every other Bernie endorsed candidacy, which is devastating. Okay? 100%. Actually, now just a shamed left populist? Yeah, well, that's true. So, am I wrong to have made the assessment that Graham Platner, given his policies, regardless of his red flags, was still a better choice than Susan Collins and Janet Mills? No. Okay? With the current information that we have on Graham Platner, obviously that's an entirely different predicament. If Graham Platner had credible accusations of conducting war crimes in the same way that he has a credible accusation of rape, then that would have been irredeemable as well. Okay? But for a lot of people, their assessment directly stemmed from the fact that he went and did 4 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq and then joined Blackwater. For me, the Blackwater thing was the biggest red flag. Okay? The Blackwater thing and the Totem Cop tattoo was major red flags, should have been seen in the vetting process, and it should have absolutely been a red flag that was, that would have stopped him from running. But I think, and I can only make this assessment because I have no connection to these people that hand-selected this candidate, they saw a guy who was capable of delivering a charismatic speech, which, for the record, regardless of his immoral nature, that part still remains to be true, especially in a state like Maine, that he was a candidate that was capable of exciting a lot of older white voters. Okay? Now, there's varying degrees of support that were thrown in the direction of Graham Platner. I myself, of course, were at times talking about how ridiculous some of the campaigns were coming from people who were openly pro-Israel and were taking that position because they were pro-Israel. It wasn't because of it wasn't because they had seen red flags or anything. It was very clear that they were like, he's anti-Israel, or Graham Platner is what do you call it? Graham Platner is anti-Israel. I'm pro-Israel. That's it. I hate it. Right? Why are your chats being modded? Because you're fucking linking a psychopathic cyber stalker of mine's manifesto in the chat. And as a 7-month subscriber, you should know better than to do that. That's why. That's why you're getting modded. If Platner were a Republican, his rape allegation would have helped his campaign. If Platner was a Republican, he probably would not drop out. No one would demand he drop out. What makes him a psychopath and a cyber stalker? I don't know. His last 6 years of social media footprint, day in, day out, endless coverage of every little thing that I do from a negative framework. That's a pretty good assessment of the situation, I think. His cyber stalking and also his psychopathic behavior. What does this mean for the Dem majority? We don't know yet. I don't know who they're going to put forth, but what I will say is this. My position on this issue from October 21st, 2025 is the exact same right now. Okay? My position on this is the exact same. The fact that there is a lot of momentum, behind this guy, a unknown entity who was able to defeat in the primaries the governor of the state, okay? The establishment hand-selected candidate that the field was cleared for, regardless of those red flags, like the Totem Cop tattoo, the Blackwater CV, and some less favorable things that he had said on Reddit many years ago, right? Regardless of all of that, he actually fucking destroyed. He destroyed Janet Mills, Bill's Mafia till the bitter end. There's an important lesson there, okay? That's what I'm interested in. That's what I've been interested in. And that's what I will continue being interested in. Now, the lesson could be one of two things. One, it could literally be because he's a white guy who said that, he had redeemed himself. He had gotten better. He had issues with PTSD. Like he was capable of telling a really good story. Okay. Why you stick with Morris Katz for Platner and Brand Lander? Who is Cyberstalker? Why do I stick with Morris Katz? Why do you get your information from insane people? I have no connection to the Fight Agency, and I have maintained the position that Fight Agency makes banger ads. That's it. They're an ad agency. They're not a political organization. I don't know why people are trying to tie me to the Fight Agency. It's an ad agency, and they make really good ads. Like, I stand by that. They make really, really great ads, okay? But they're an ad agency. They're not a political organization. They're not a political movement. They're an ad agency. And not only are they an ad agency, they're an ad agency. They've worked with like the likes of Michael Asher, okay? Perhaps that's the best exact, that's the best proof that they are not like a part of a political movement, but more so just an ad agency, right? There is a level of mercenary work that you do in that situation. And I'm sure there's plenty of great people. And I think there are some great people there, some wonderful people that work there, but ultimately it is an ad agency, right? And before people say like, oh, the Maine DSA endorsed Graham Platner, they did not. They suggested him, okay? DSA never endorsed Graham Platner. They simply suggested him on the ballot as an acceptable substitute to Janet Mills and to Susan Collins, which is my position as well, okay? Recommendations are not endorsements, and even endorsements do not mean that someone is a DSA candidate in general. You could be a DSA endorsed candidate like Troy Jackson was for governor. That doesn't mean Troy Jackson is, I don't think Troy Jackson was a part of the DSA, right? But I think the important lesson here is, once again, to demand more proper vetting and not to go out to bat, even to the degree that I did on campaigns like Graham Platner's. Even though I hedged my commentary over and over again and had many private and some public disagreements with the likes of even FD Signifier, Cavernickel as well, and you know, defended certain people like Chris Rabb when they criticized Graham Platner, defended FD's criticisms of Graham Platner. I still thought that he would be a better substitute for Susan Collins or for Janet Mills. That's it. Hedging doesn't work in Clipchimp land. Of course, it doesn't matter. But if you're thinking like, oh, you showed the same level of support, you lend your entire audience and your whole ass level of support to Graham Platner, it's not true. As people have seen already, and as I talked about as well, there was a point where I wanted to interview Graham Platner because I had certain questions of Graham Platner. And here's one of those clips. I'm glad that someone at least found it. Okay. This is the reasons why people like him. When are you having him on? He's not. I don't think he's going to come on. He wanted to come on. Initially, his team wanted to bring him on, but y'all yelled and cried so much and pissed in your pants and farted that I couldn't even have a conversation with him about his background and get to know him better and get to understand where he was coming from. I don't think he's ever coming on because, well, like 100%. See, but this is it. We made fun of a Nazi. Brother, you have to be a little bit more tactical about this stuff, okay? You have to, you know, I would have liked to have a one-on-one conversation about that and numerous other things. I wasn't going to, like, glaze him. And that's now the reason why he's not coming on. It's all good, you know? I mean, I don't really give a shit. Like I said, it's out of my hands. We're Pills Mafia, baby. We're Pills Mafia. Graham Platner is literally the liberal Donald Trump people have been looking for. Yeah, that's still true, by the way. He is. Yeah, no, he is the candidate for the moment. He is the leader of the American woke chud movement. Anyone who actually watches the coverage can see the difference. No, there's plenty of people who are in this community as well who came in here and would regularly yell at me. But they would make it seem as though like my level of commentary or support for Graham Platner was the same as like Abdul El-Sayed. You know what I mean? Like that's, or my level of support for Daria Liza or Chris Rabb, people like that. That's just not true. And there's varying degrees of social democrats, leftists on the internet that did offer a lot more support. Not that it matters. Like I certainly made my position known, which is that Graham Platner was a preferable candidate to Susan Collins and Janet Mills. None of these guys ever actually countered that for some reason. And it's still fucking true. You know what I mean? Well, it's not true any longer, but it was like, it was that conversation that consistently led to people clipping shit to be like, you defended him a lot. You defended him a lot. No, I didn't. I defended the idea that he is, at least at the time, with the information that we had, a better candidate pushing for better policies than Susan Collins and Pills Mafia. So that's where we're at, or that's where I was at. Okay. As a longtime fan, I think you need to reflect on how you take criticism, especially from the left. Not everyone is a wrecker or a Maoist third worldist. Sometimes they just disagree with you. I know. But we're playing a little bit of rewriting of history here as well. Because the people that were coming in here with criticisms weren't like Sean the Black's criticisms. They weren't like FD Signifier's criticisms. Their criticisms were Graham Platner raped and ate children in Afghanistan, specifically did torture in Abu Ghraib, and you love doing torture to the Iraqi children. You have the death of 1 million Iraqi babies on your hands. You love when Iraqi children die. You love when Iraqi children die. That's why you're supporting Graham Platner. That's why you want Graham Platner to be your father. What the fuck? Sean never says shit like that. Yeah, exactly. Which is why I'm saying we can have reasonable fucking criticisms and disagreements amongst one another. Okay? But of course, if someone comes in and says that, I'm going to be like, you're an insane person. That's the whole point. And for some weird reason, people do this like weird Mott and Bailey where they go, well, there was some reasonable disagreements in chat with you, and not like me yelling at the people who were like, every person who's been a troop at any point in their lives deserves the death penalty. Okay? You're creating a non-existent person? Oh, come on. Come on, brother. That's not a straw man. It's like, under normal circumstances, I like embellishing and I like exaggerating because I'm supposed to be someone who's an entertaining figure. This is the one instance where there is a very specific tendency in this community, a very specific slant. Because, like, look, Dylan Saba, who is my friend, who was very critical of Graham Platner and kept repeatedly saying over and over again, this guy's a fucking Blackwater mercenary from 2018. Of course he's got fucking major red flags. I don't know what the fuck people are saying. I agree with him. I respect his position. I agree with him. I agree with the red flags myself. But for me, as far as like a potential for a broader coalition, as far as pushing for a left populist that I did not think had this many irredeemable qualities, let's be real, you know, it was fine to hedge for me to say, hey, look, it's out of my hands, as I did back then. It's out of my hands. If the people of Maine like them, the people of Maine like them. Okay? That's it. Yeah. And it's so strange that there are a lot of people who are running victory laps as though like Graham Platner is currently dropping out because like he is Bad Empanada said Morris Katz was my handler. My Jewish handler, Morris Katz. Is that the argument that we're making now? Bad Empanada? Come on, man. It's ironic because they also, on the one hand, say that I'm like working with Fight Agency, which is not true. It's fucking ridiculous to say that. And not only that, but also, like Morris Katz is 23 years old, okay? When I started doing political commentary 13 years ago, Morris Katz was like 10, okay? What are we talking about? He's not 23, he's 24. Okay. And not only that, but I think he's a great ad guy, for the record. I think he's a great ad guy. I think most people who are good faith are coming from the argument that obviously a war piggy who made like 5 tours and didn't have enough, so much that he enlisted as a mercenary and got a Nazi tattoo, was bound to come out as a rapist or something. This is obvious for a lot of people, and apparently it is not to you. That's not saying all veterans need to go through the gallows. No, I agree. But the problem is, I also shared that same level of skepticism, but it wasn't enough for me to just like come out and be like, fuck Graham Platner, fuck Bernie Sanders, fuck the entire broad left populist movement. They're all a bunch of Zionists, okay? And no, it wasn't obvious that he would be a rapist either, okay? That's the difference. And now that we have evidence that he is, it's over. But do you understand, like, do you understand where I'm coming from? Because it's not like I didn't hedge. It's not like I didn't it's not like I came out of the gate swinging and was like, he's the greatest thing that has ever happened. He's the face of this movement. He's the best guy of all time. Okay. It's just like there are varying degrees of support that I offer certain candidates. Graham Platner didn't get any of that, with the exception of whenever people would come and tell me that Janet Mills or Susan Collins would be an acceptable substitute, I said, no, I don't think that's the case, with the evidence that I had, with the information that I had at the time. And when new information comes in, we change our perspective. Yeah. And when the Nazi tattoo came out, I spent a good deal of time talking about how that paired up with the Blackwater mercenary thing was a bridge too far. Okay. But that's it. If you were expecting me to stand in opposition with one member of this, one candidate that they put forward that I had no say in whatsoever, while, taking somewhat of a somewhat of an arm's length, while still clearing the air on, some of the more ridiculous attacks, not the Blackwater stuff, but the more ridiculous shit, calling him a commie, this is bad, all this stuff. I was always going to do that. I'm always going to tell you what my actual honest to God opinion is. It's that simple. I think the support for Platner and Valdez were vastly different, and I don't know how obvious criticisms of Platner weren't plain to see. Yeah. I have a 20-minute screen record where you were telling chatters to have charitability for being a soldier and how many people in this community have changed. Yes, that's a stance that I will always maintain. I believe that. And a lot of people don't agree with that. And they're using Graham Platner as proof that, it's just veterans are not to be trusted. Okay. I'm not a troop fucker in the way that Democrats are, where they're like, oh my God, Amy McGrath is going to be a wonderful candidate or anything like that. Right. I'm not one of those guys. I'm just agnostic. No one will mention Adam Hamawi, though. No, these are the same people that also were shitting on Adam Hamawi. In any case, there's still, this is still up in the air. The real point of the conflict is that military vets cannot debate. That's really it. People don't really give a fuck about Platner or the victim. Exactly. And it's interesting because a lot of the conversation, a lot of the anger and resentment is not even coming from, in this community, it's coming from, people who are like, we told you so. Why didn't you listen to us? You should have just outright shit on him from the start instead of, having your criticisms, but still saying look, he's a better candidate than Susan Collins. He's a better candidate than Susan Collins and Janet Mills, right? You shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said that at all, which is not the case. I mean, with the information that we had, he had a lot of red flags, but even outside of that, without any sort of credible accusation, he still was better than Susan Collins at the time, and also Susan Collins and also Janet Mills. So I wish you and other progressives had treated the Platner race like New York 12. Oh, that's a fair shake. I mean, if you're talking about the rest of the online progressive left, I can't speak for their varying degrees of support. I'm just simply telling you where I'm coming from. Okay. But I am understanding of where they're coming from as well. I know what their assessment is. New York 12 was the Michael Asher race, for those of you who don't know, which we just did not talk about at all. I think the level of support I gave Platner was even less than Brad Lander, honestly. And I'm fine with Brad Lander being a part of this broader movement, despite my disagreements with Brad, right? On certain issues. It's tougher, though, because it was a Senate race. Yeah, it's a huge deal. At the end of the day, I don't know where this will go. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know where this, I don't know who the replacement is going to be. I'm going to obviously continue working on the candidates that I have been working with. But if you are trying to understand what my assessment is, or if you saw what my skepticism was, but also saw a bunch of clips of me being I'm riding with riding with Graham Platner or whatever. Well, I'm here to clarify my position. And I know that no matter what I say, there's going to be a fucking barrage of misinformation out there, especially because no matter what, when I try to offer you any sort of nuanced critique or any sort of nuanced analysis, people want black and white. People don't want to hear. People don't want to hear what the nuanced perspective is on this. Morris Katz apparently has not reached out to the New York Post. His team is delusional, this person said, noting that Katz, a former campaign advisor to New York City Mayor Zohar Mamdani, is still recommending Platner remain in the race. Morris Katz says, to be very clear, no one in campaign deliberations are familiar with my thinking is talking to the New York Post. Hassan Piker tells me Platner should drop out as sees Troy Jackson as a clear replacement that satisfies the needs for credentials and embodies some of the populist policies. I mean, Troy Jackson is not a great replacement for Graham Platner. Like, I will be honest with you. I just don't know what the alternatives are. I don't know what the alternatives are. We'll see what they put up. We'll see who pushes for what. And we'll see where it goes. Choose me, I'll move, buddy. Yeah. As someone from the global south, I appreciate everything you've done. P.S. You are not going to get charitability from the people who are just looking to score internet points. I know. Yeah. I mean, all the fucking accusations that I'm like, a mercenary for the DNC or a mercenary for a fight agency. These are fucking ridiculous accusations coming from the schizo left conspiracy theorists. And there's not much else I can say. You can see the deliberate actions that I've taken. And it's really funny because those very same people will then turn around and will literally be like, oh, Hassan wanted to work desperately with Graham Platner. It's his campaign that didn't want to work with him. And then they don't work through the motions of that. Like, they don't work through why that didn't actually happen. They don't ask the question why the Platner campaign had no issues working with like David Sirota, Majority Report, numerous other outlets. But for some reason, they just chose to avoid being interviewed by someone like myself. They don't actually, because if they were to investigate a little bit further, they would understand exactly what I said. They would arrive at the same conclusion that I suspect the skepticism coming from their camp was because I was going to ask him about his background in Blackwater, his tattoo, the decision-making process there. And they didn't want that. They didn't want to have that conversation at all. And in that conversation that I had with Chet, where I'm like, you guys have to be a little bit more tactful. I'm saying like, we have to be a little bit more tactful as far as like how much we yell about certain things, because then it undermines the opportunity to do proper vetting for a campaign, proper vetting for a candidate in the process of an interview. Okay? That's what that statement is about. That's why I say we have to be a little bit more tactful. Your haters don't even defend Daria, Claire, Corey, Rab, Hamawi. They're unserious people. Yeah, it's all a gotcha attempt. So yeah. Bro, you just showed a clip on which you were complaining they canceled because of chatters, not because of your opinions and doubts. See, this is what I mean. Brother, do you not understand the words that were coming out of my mouth, even in that fucking clip? What are you talking about? Yes, I said you guys chirp too much. You wouldn't let me fucking cook. Hello? How do you think... Are you stupid? How do you think a campaign views a potential interview as like maybe contentious? They obviously look at the way that, you know, my community reacts to the fucking candidate. And no, I didn't even want to fucking cook him. I just wanted to investigate further, like ask some serious questions about like where he stands. Okay? What the fuck is this? Gasparino? Is Hassan Piker the one who calls the shots in the Democratic Party?
That Hassan Piker has a voice. I mean, have you ever listened to that guy? Some of his theories about everything from Marxism, economic Marxism, to cultural Marxism, to Israel.
He's way.
So this guy is their standard bearer, and I just found it fascinating. People said, "Oh, it's all over for Platinum because Hassan Piker came out against him." I'm like, Hassan, he's the guy that calls the shots in the Democratic Party.
I'm not.
So the people Jackie's talking about in the primary.
It's so funny that these guys have like invented this alternative reality. I'm not this person. Why does nobody give a shit about my perspective on this? Ironically enough, I'm not this fucking person, man. You guys keep saying it, and then you're like, I'm scared about the alternative reality that I have envisioned in my mind.
I think to a large degree,
but a lot of people, yeah, but that's what I mean. They are controlling. The left is controlling. The left has replaced the establishment as the driving force.
Did you just say that Troy Jackson isn't a good option because you said yesterday that he's him? I'm saying that he embodies a lot of the populist qualities in his legislative track record. But ultimately, I mean, he's not a very charismatic guy. I don't know what's going to happen in Maine. I have no idea. I have no understanding. I'm just telling you This is all happening in real time. It's not that he's too old. It's just that he reads as too old. But when you look at someone like Troy Jackson, who has a legislative track record that's very good, like fairly reliable in a state like Maine, but then you look at the way he carries himself, and then you look at the way that Graham Platner was doing all these fucking rallies, and you develop a better understanding of why so many people in Maine fucking voted for this dude, okay, regardless of the red flags. And that is important to identify, because what comes next will need to muster up those very same forces that propelled Graham Platner into the top slot in Maine. Okay? Do you understand why I'm saying this? Because the reality of the matter is, while a lot of these establishment Democrats have been flexing, have been talking about how, it was actually the stupid consultant class wearing Carhartt for vibes that convinced everyone to vote for Graham Platner, what they fail to recognize is Mainers voted for him, okay? White, older Mainers voted for the dude. Do you understand? I said, I'm losing my mind. The consulting class and establishment Dems cleared the field for the governor, and the people of Maine voted for the dude with a Totenkopf tat who was anti-Israel and pro-Medicare for all instead. I agree he should drop out, but this argument is so unbelievably stupid. And you have to identify why that happened, okay? Analysis does not equal endorsement. You have to identify why that happened. If you simply say, my least favorite characters in the establishment, or my least favorite characters that are anti-establishment content creators are the reason why this guy fucking won, you're a moron, okay? Why is no one taking this shit seriously? I know why a lot of people on the internet want to score cheap political points by using a real instance of rape to do a gotcha moment. But what I cannot comprehend is why serious people who are supposed to be serious analysts are not looking at the situation and recognizing the changes that have taken place within the base of support for the Democratic Party, okay? I genuinely asked this, and I don't mean to be an ass, I promise, but why is it fine that he committed atrocities abroad because he later said it was bad, but when he's raped someone, that's the red line? Because okay, do you want my perspective, or do you want the actual, adult analysis, the sober analysis of how people view someone who's a veteran? Because no one fucking cares in the United States of America when someone is a veteran. That's not seen as a negative thing, okay? That is just a negative association in this community and this community alone. That's it, okay? Like, no one associates someone who went on 4 tours, even as a machine gunner for the Marines, as someone that has done atrocities, okay? That's it. That's it. They see veterans as heroes. They don't see veterans as war criminals. They see veterans as heroes. So if you're asking me what my assessment is on every veteran, I treat every single person, including every single veteran, as an individual. I don't treat them as a monolith. I don't treat them as all baby-killing warmongers. I look at it on a case-by-case basis. That's it. That's it. And with Graham Platner, the biggest red flag wasn't the fact that he did 4 tours, even though that is, not great, obviously. But the biggest red flag was that he, as recently as 2018, joined Constellas, the private security firm, to do embassy security, which is like the lowest level. Ironically enough, probably less war crimes took place as he was doing embassy security, as opposed to like potentially being a machine gunner and a grunt, right? Having said that, the decision-making process there is what matters to me. He saw Blackwater and he saw the war crimes that Blackwater had engaged in, and he was like, this is it. This is I'm going to go and join this. I'm going to join this group. That was a huge red flag. The other red flag, obviously, was, again, the decision-making process that caused him to go and get a fucking Totenkopf tattoo and keep that shit on his body for a very long time, okay? In some respects, I feel like we are doing the same thing that like Neera Tanden does, right? When we say, why the fuck do the Mainers not care that he was a mercenary, is almost the same like demand for disciplining the base instead of understanding where the base is and trying to, find a more acceptable substitute. It's the same disciplining operation that Zionists do when they're like, why do people hate Israel? Just because we're morally on the correct side of this argument does not change that reality that, like, you have to, what do I always say? You have to go to where the masses are. You have to speak the language of the masses, and you have to appeal to the needs of the masses if you want to build a mass movement. Okay? You can't sit around and be like, why do people not see every veteran as a fucking child murderer? They should see every veteran as a child murderer, which, by the way, I don't do that regardless. Okay? That's it. A lot of this conversation still goes back to please be normal. It's ironic that people are mad about a guy who got banned for being a person who got banned on this platform for discriminating against the protected class. Unfortunately, on this platform, veterans are a protected class. And I did discriminate against a U.S. representative at the time in 2019 who happens to be a veteran. People think I got banned for saying America deserved bleep. I actually got banned for discriminating against the protected class, which veterans are. Okay? In any case, yes, on Twitch, the terms of service is so that veterans are seen as a protected class. For those of you who don't know, now you know. This combo pisses me off so much. Like, Maine voters chose Graham for the left position, and all you did was say the truth that eating bread, Graham, is better than eating shit, Mills or Collins. And it turns out that the bread was moldy, and now the moldy bread is just as bad as eating shit, and you're throwing it away. Yes. So, that was good. Can you define what exactly is normal? You were describing it like an abstract concept, which is difficult to grasp. Can we get like a checklist or something? Chatter. That's funny. That is the most autistic question I've ever received in my entire life. Respect. No, I can't give you what a checklist of normal is, okay? Sometimes we just got to mask it, okay? I do it all the time, and I think you can too. I believe in you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have like a checklist of what normal is. I think it's something that you just learn by being out and about and being around people, obviously, and just like getting a better grasp of how the average person operates, how the average person thinks, where the average person is, right? Like, Nick Pollum is not a normal person. He's a Twitch streamer, right? We are far from the, we are very far away from the normal individual. Now, having said that, Nick Pollum's conversation I had with him yesterday and his opinions on politics are probably closer to the uninitiated, politically uneducated normie, a guy who's just kind of like, I don't really understand what's going on, but I feel like there's some corruption and some foul play taking place in American politics. Like, that's closer to the average person's understanding of politics than every single individual in this chat. And sometimes it's important for us to recognize that when we have conversations in the real world. Okay? Yeah, Evan had a good take on this, but he said people talk about media literacy, but I think we need to start talking about moral literacy. Hassan has made a few edgy jokes here and there, but Asmongold's daily, unironically talking about why killing people is great. There's no comparison here.
Well,
be honest. Do you think Asmon knows stuff?
Well,
be honest. Do you think Asmon knows a single thing that I just explained to you?
Maybe, but the thing about Asmon, he does have a memory that, like, if he sees something, he'll remember it. Like, he has like a photographic memory, so I don't know.
There is fucking 0% chance that he knows a single damn thing that I just mentioned to you.
I mean, he's talking about it all day, so what's he talking about then? He must
He's
know.
just fucking rehashing whatever he's seen on Twitter and then grokking it.
I don't know. I think he might know. One of these days, you and him have to have a conversation.
I would love that. I
don't want to be there, but I think
balls in his court. Balls in his court.
I really do.
Also, people can talk. They can just talk out of their ass. He knows.
I mean, he's good. You and him both. And that's why I put you guys in S tier. You guys have the ability to talk about things and keep people interested more than most people. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't deny that. You keep people interested.
I guess I'm not denying that I can do that. Here's my struggle when you say we can't just tell normies that veterans are baby murderers, is that babies did get murdered by American soldiers, a lot of them. I know, dude. I know. But ask yourself, is this the appropriate vector for advocacy? And if the answer is yes, please reconsider. Okay? This is why I say you have to come at this from a point of understanding of where the masses are, what is normalized in American society, in American culture, and work your way through that process. Because there's never been a moment where I'm like, join the military. It's great. They are, the most important defensive force that's ever existed. I don't do any of that shit. I tell people all the time that the recruitment practices are unbelievably predatory. The American military is not a force for good around the world, and that we should dramatically reconsider the way we approach these sorts of conversations. We approach these sorts of concepts. Okay, the output of the U.S. military is not to be the world police. That's a overall good thing, but to advance the interests of the capitalist class. That's clear. Okay, but that doesn't mean you can run around and be like, they're murdering children with regular frequency all the time. Like it's insane. Not untrue, but think of how many vets have done absolutely no reflection on their service and continue to use their discount at Denny's like they did a good job. I know, but that's not who you're trying to talk to. You're trying to talk to other people. You're trying to talk to other people that are not the relentless hog veteran who thinks he actually did the awesome thing of like murdering Muslim children or whatever. Okay, that's not who you are talking to when you're having these conversations. And you have to always remember, other people hear you, okay? Other people hear you and go, ugh, what the fuck did he say? That's crazy. They don't go, wow, this guy is clearly on the right side of this argument, and now I'm going to seriously reconsider my worldview. A lot of people, unfortunately, never do that. They don't want to push for a vision in the affirmative by, just going through the motions a little bit, moderating your messaging a little bit. It's fucking crazy. And I wish people would do that. And many of you love the guys who do that, right? Who do that even better than I ever could. Zohran Mamdani is a great example. You guys all love him. He does this perfectly well. He liberalizes his worldview to make it appealing and to be at the forefront of this movement. And you guys love it when he does it. You love it when I do it as well, or when I see success in this thing that we've been trying to fucking build for years. But you never want to think about the work that and the messaging that it took to get to this point. You see what I mean? That's it. I want to watch the FD Signifier red flag video and see what lessons we can learn from it, as he was, alongside Sean the Black, a very loud critic of Graham Platner, which many people, I think, misunderstood his point as well. I talked to FD privately many times over leading up to this video as well. Okay. We got Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to CNN, by the way, on the docket too. We're going to get to all of that and more. But look, there were a lot of people who said these red flags are irredeemable. Okay. I was not one of those people until recently. Okay. You're not going to like the lessons because it's about white supremacy. No, first of all, see, this is what I mean. A lot of people misunderstand my position on this. I have made that argument all the way back in fucking November 2025. What did I tell you? You have seen me talk about this, especially in comparison to a candidate that I actually was very excited about and had endorsed and have been working with versus Graham Platner. The Abdul El-Sayed versus Graham Platner argument comes to mind instantly. This is something that I said on the Pod Johns' podcast all the way back in November 2025. Let's run the tape one more time. We shall see if the liberals are more forgiving of guys like Graham Platner, because he's a white dude, and they think that is like the primary version of electability for liberals in general.
Yeah.
Or is it because he came out of the gate swinging with very leftist, like left flank policies, and that's the reason why they're forgiving of him. And I think the contest I'm paying close attention to is Abdul El-Sayed, a person who has none of the red flags whatsoever. Another person that basically has an infallible reputation and has actually more experience in politics as well. He's run for the governors. He failed to defeat. I think it was Whitmer that he failed to defeat on a Medicare for All campaign. And he is the real deal, right? And he's also another early Bernie pick. He's also anti-Zionist. We shall see if liberals are just as forgiving of a brown guy that is running on a very similar campaign to Graham Platner.
Without the tattoo.
Yeah, without the Nazi tattoo, but he's a brown guy. Does that mean that it's like scarier? My point is a white dude with a Nazi tattoo.
I think we know the answer, don't we?
Well, I
think we know the answer.
No, I don't.
As a brown person, I think I know the answer.
No, I think that's defeatist. And that's, I don't abide by that. I recognize that there's a hurdle, right? There's a hurdle, there's a higher threshold, but you can climb it. And you can make up for that higher threshold by instilling messaging discipline and then not stepping on any landmines to the best of your ability, and also just focusing on issues that the largest base actually care about. That's why I always say send her to the working class, because the working class, even if they don't self-identify as the working class. ProMaster says, I was a child in Iraq during the war. I didn't like Platner and didn't support him, but I also didn't mind flipping one voice to be pro-Palestine / anti-Israel. We need all the support we can get. My thought was maybe he is bad, but a bad person against Israel is better than Collins. That was my assessment as well. That's it. And a lot of people treated that assessment as an outright, like, he is your favorite person. And there's so much evidence to suggest that I had tremendous scrutiny for Graham Platner's campaign. But if you look at just the clips of me arguing against chatters who were making insane points, like much broader points about every fucking veteran being a certain way or all this shit. Dog, I'm sorry, but you just white-splained work twice as hard for half the reward to a woman of color. Dog, don't you think maybe I have a little bit of background in this too? Yeah, I'm saying that because I fucking believe it. Yes, I know it. What do you mean? Hello? I'm doing that in defense of Abdul al-Sayed. I'm like, look, we know how it is. I understand how it is, but it's not unfixable. It's not unsolvable. I said this about Kamala Harris too. When people were like, oh, she's a black woman. Kamala Harris is a black woman. It'll never work. And I was like, no, it doesn't matter. That's a hurdle, but it's one that you can climb. It's just going to be a harder hill to climb, but it doesn't matter. It's still climbable. What am I supposed to do? Yeah, Zahra Mamdani is proof that you can do that, right? I don't think we just cut, great candidacy short like Abdul al-Sayed, specifically because he's not a white man. That's it. But yeah, all jokes aside, lesser evil voter across the board, right? Leading up to the recent allegations, obviously, recent allegations aside, and I think, as I've said over and over again, I think he should drop out. You literally brag about the Rhodes Scholarship named after white supremacist Cecil Rhodes, and you ignored our criticism of Platner. You have anti-blackness. You do work on it. I'm pointing to the credentials of a brown Egyptian Muslim man. This has got to be a joke, right? You can't be this Jay Sakai pilled. I don't think. This is a joke, right? Please tell me you're fucking baiting and you're joking. Like, there's no, like, you think that has anything to do with my assessment of Cecil Rhodes or Rhodesia or white supremacy when I point to the credentials of a person by naming the scholarship that he received? I can't understand. There's no way. I don't think you're being serious. I'm just going to move on from this, especially because I'm literally talking about Abdul Rahman el-Sayed. Okay, I'm talking about Abdul Rahman el-Sayed and how white people oftentimes will overlook the background and credentials of a person just because his name is Abdul Rahman el-Sayed. Chatter bringing back secret woke 0.1 alpha. Abdul Rahman Muhammad el-Sayed. It's not a joke. It's coming from a black woman. Please stop uplifting that scholarship. Okay. Sure. I apologize. I did a Bodies and Spaces. I apologize. I should have never brought up the Rhodes Scholarship that Abdul Rahman el-Sayed has when talking about how he is unbelievably credentialed, far more credentialed than any other person running right now. I have a lot of learning to do. Thank you. Yeah, it's true.
Senate Prime.
So Noah Rothman, this is from the National Review. Noah Rothman went on the Jake Tapper CNN broadcast talk about Mallory McMorrow. This is like right before the Platner stuff happened, and we're gonna get to this in a second. And I also have an interesting take on this too, but we'll do that in a second. Does anyone have the FD Signifier video? What gift? Here.
Someone said, why are we talking about Graham Platner? Because I've been hearing about this.
No, not this one. Not this one. Doesn't he have another video on it? Not a recent one. No, this is the recent one called White Fatigue, right?
What I'm trying to make clear here is that
No, this is from 3 hours ago. I'm not. Isn't there one that's like, I think, yeah, this is the one. Why I left the white left.
I'm putting all white leftists on timeout until further notice. I've been hanging around y'all too long, and now I have lice. And black people shouldn't get lice. That it doesn't work like that for us. Lice in America cannot survive in black hair. Y'all probably don't realize that because a lot of y'all don't be knowing shit about us, but we already off topic. And the fact that I be explaining black people shit is kind of why I have this problem in the first place. We're going to start out talking Graham Platner a little bit because he's a great framing tool for everything I want to get off my chest. I want to be really clear. I'm going to say that a lot in this video. I don't like this dude. He feels like a seasonal villain from a prestige political drama like House of Cards or Scandal or something. I'm not saying he's a Nazi, but he's at least like Hydra or Order of the Cyclops for those of you that watched Watchmen all those years ago. He just is that guy, and it's incredibly obvious to anyone who isn't some of y'all. And this isn't just taking issue with his military service. I don't have a purity politic toward anything, really, if you know me, but definitely not ex-military people on the left. I am anti-American military. Like, I don't want to misconstrue that. But there are also Black Panthers who were ex-military. The American military spends billions of dollars marketing and propagandizing young people across this country. So I try to hold a nuanced position for how that works. But I wouldn't apply this to Platner. 4 tours and Blackwater and a Nazi tattoo is a lot. And I know that's not a hot take. I know even more moderate folks would agree with that. So I have to wonder why and how is Platner being pushed so hard by the establishment and the online left in general? Platner is the latest project out of the Fight Agency. The Fight Agency is a political consultancy that was started by some ex-Bernie Sanders, ex-John Fetterman folks. And in recent years, they've been behind the success of Zohran Mamdani, as well as people like Dan Osborne, Bob Brooks, etc. And aside from Zohran Mamdani, you kind of see what's happening here. All we're missing is Hank Hill. Like, the main, mostly valid argument that I will get about Platner is that he's one of the few folks amongst the Democrats that vows to pull military support from Israel.
Not a single taxpayer dollar should be spent.
By the way, a lot of people consistently point to me talking about Graham Platner being an exceptional communicator as like defense. That's literally the reason why he won, okay? He is very good at telling a fucking story and playing a role. I don't know if FD will agree with me on this, but like that's why he fucking won the goddamn primary against the established name that is the fucking governor of this state. Okay? That's just true. It's objectively true. Okay? I don't think this should be beyond the fucking pale.
On arming and defending a country that commits a genocide.
And that is extremely important for Palestinian liberation. But I do have to ask, why are we being asked to not just tolerate Platner for that reason, but to see him almost as the future of the Democratic Party and maybe even the left? Why has he become the darling of the online, predominantly white left in this time frame? Why did the Fight Agency scout him in the first place? It's because the Fight Agency knows that this image of white American exceptionalism and especially masculinity is still highly valued amongst the white masses. He's doing a reskin of the Marlboro Man, or better yet, like Don Draper, Joel Miller from The Last of Us. Literally, he looks like Walter White. And I want you to remember, all of these characters were villains. And historically, it's always straight white men that...
No one ever said that on the left side? No, I mean, I think there were a lot of people who were glazing the shit out of Graham Platner, and that's what he's referencing. Like, look, and FD will attest to this, both in private correspondence, but also my public statements, that like I always hedged my Graham Platner commentary with his red flags, but you know, there were definitely a lot of people that were very excited about how charismatic he presented himself as.
Fail to realize that fact about those characters. And when you're not a straight white male,
like you've been glazing Platner for months. If there is no difference in my commentary on Graham Platner versus what I've said and what I've done for Daria Liza, Chris Rabb, Claire Valdez, Adam Hamawi, Abdul Al-Sayed, why have I been doing any of this? Why have I been doing any of this? You hedge, but come on, man. But like, why have I been doing any of this shit? Did you see the same level of excitement, the same level of support that any number of different people received? Or was it just me arguing against chatters like yourself that would sometimes make very stupid comparisons? Like, oh, well, why not Kamala Harris then? What did I tell you? If Kamala Harris had the same platform as Graham Platner, she would have won, okay? And yes, I would have fucking door knocked for her. Like I said, if Kamala Harris came out swinging against Israel's genocide, what did I tell you? I was like, it's too significant of a race to just fucking ignore.
You always take note of those types of fans. They may not be the worst people in the world, but they're people to observe. But the left falling for the same trick like this is not surprising when you realize that white leftists in America have never consistently had a halfway decently developed racial analysis. And this is just a historical pattern at this point. Again, shout out to a book I've been reading from Brian Quoba, Hubert Harrison, The Forbidden Genius of Black Radicalism. Hubert Harrison was a lesser known Black socialist who worked and wrote in the same eras as Booker T. Washington, Du Bois, and Garvey, and was to the left of all of them during that time, including Du Bois.
I don't think Platner's popularity up here is due to his Israel take as much as it's due to his healthcare take. No, I agree. For sure.
But in this, he also found himself confounded by the challenge of organizing with white socialists who at the time could not see past their anti-Blackness to form effective solidarity and build a functional coalition. And this pattern has never stopped repeating, which is illustrated by this excerpt from Eugene Debs that's in the book. In capitalism, the Negro question is a grave one and will grow more threatening as the contradictions and complications of capitalist society multiply, Debs allowed. But this need not worry us. Let them settle the Negro question in their way if they can. We have nothing to do with it, for that is their fight. Debs here exemplified the way in which even radical white people who called for a working class revolution against capitalism could simultaneously distance themselves from the specific challenges facing the most oppressed segment of the working class. I'm bringing this up because I want to show that this is an infinite loop at this point. White leftists with little to no racial analytical frame can't help but censor their sensibilities, even in the face of obvious red flags. Or
This is 100% accurate. Okay, it's true. What do I always fucking say? There is no path to socialism, to developing socialism in this country without Black socialism. Capital B, Black socialism. Straight up. That's it. Black people are a obviously fundamentally important part of the American working class. But beyond that, they've also been at the forefront of every civil rights and every working man's struggle in this country historically. Okay. And yes, given the unique nature of anti-Blackness in this country, because the white supremacist shape always takes the form of anti-Blackness at the end of the day. This doesn't mean that like anti-brown behavior is not also baked into the system. Islamophobia is also not baked into the system. But anti-Blackness is very specific. It has been a fundamental plank of American culture, American existence, and therefore it needs to always have its own care and consideration.
Clearly better options if they don't appeal to their aesthetics and need to censor themselves. Why have we centered Graham Platner when we have Chris Robb, who, from what I understand, is the furthest left candidate the Democrats have ever had in any political race? And he low-key still fits the gruff leftist daddy kink that so many of y'all seem to like. Another face that I haven't seen on my feed at all and I had to get from somebody else is Charles Booker. Booker has as progressive an agenda as you can have in mainstream politics and is in a very vulnerable red state that could use a lot more attention and support from the online left. And
the only thing I'll say here is the electoral calculation for Graham Platner looked far better than Booker. That's it. I mean, Booker's dope. I've talked about Charles Booker. I've talked about how I would love to go and work with him if he wants my help. But Booker's in Kentucky. It's a far more difficult hill to climb than like what seemed to be an easy lock state in Maine, because Susan Collins is like finally going to get taken out.
Not there. Booker's not just anti-sending weapons to Israel. He's Medicare for all. He's for universal basic income, stopping data centers, decriminalizing poverty, and reparations. Is everything you can want from a mainstream politician, but he's invisible compared to Platner. I don't follow elections much unless it's local, but I have seen Platner's face a million times more than either Robb or Booker. Robb did spend some time with Hassan. Booker, he's got nothing as far as I can tell. Meanwhile, Platner has tons of interviews, Majority Report, Mehdi Hassan, New York Times. Why is this happening? Why is that viable? From my perspective and experience, a lot of white leftists understand that it's bad to be racist, but they don't actually understand why racism is bad or how it works. The absence of a critical understanding of how whiteness works is why a lot of them fall for the same trick over and over, to the point where the fight agency clearly has this type built out just for y'all. If you want to vote for Platner as an odious candidate that will help end military support to Israel, go ahead, but it should be treated as a tainted compromise for the sake of a free Palestine, not a vision for the future of the left. He should not be in our faces as much as he is. He should not have the defenders that he has that I know will show up in his comment section. He should be the online left's sneaky link that you never see in the light of day and never talk about in public. And the fact that so many white leftists don't feel this is sadly par for the course. The red flags that he has don't bother some of y'all because those red flags have never been weaponized against you. But when you're someone who's historically been targeted by this archetype, you pay attention to those patterns. You don't compromise with that. For reasons I won't get into, I've had to spend the last few weeks arguing that normalizing Nazi terminology, but wokely, is bad and that no one on the left should be doing it. And I've had some, not many, I want to be clear, but plenty of white leftists try to argue that nobody cares about Nazis, as if a couple of Nazis didn't just shoot up a mosque in San Diego just a few weeks ago, or the fact that that exact type of Nazi.
Why are we watching this victim mentality? Dog, come on. Come on. You are playing the fucking stereotype, man. This is not victim mentality, motherfucker. This is critical analysis. And also, it's correct. Like, this is the moment of vindication for FD Signifier. It's kind of ridiculous to still double down on your blind spot instead of just being like, you know what, maybe this is a good opportunity to reconsider some of the biases that I might have. It's not an accident that the people that were far more critical of Graham Platner were people like FD Signifier, Sean the Black, Chris Rabb, okay? Even AOC shied away from an endorsement. And if you recall, there were a lot of people who were yelling at Chris Rabb when Chris did that interview with Crystal Ball. And I had to come in with a little bit of course correction even in this community where I said, look, Chris Rabb, as opposed to Graham Platner, is someone who I have lent support to, who I have actually, gone and campaigned with and put the weight of this community behind. And there's a reason for that. Okay. Like, his skepticism turned out to be correct. Our lack or my limited amount of skepticism was not correct, notwithstanding the conversations about broader issues about like how, veterans are this or that. I'm not having that conversation right now, even though many people will take those conversations, will slam it in, or even, what kind of attacks you receive if you come out as someone who is critical of Israel. Because if you recall, like, Zay Squirrel also immediately was like, this guy's a fucking no good candidate and is bad, Blackwater mercenary. But even Zay Squirrel, alongside myself, had the same exact assessment with the New York Times report, right? Where they also said the same thing I did, that this kind of feels like a hit job. It turns out that there was a lot more evidence that the New York Times did not report on for one reason or another. It's remarkable that they did not report on those reasons and simply left the assessment of this allegation as someone who had one weird moment with Graham Platner, but ultimately was fine with Graham Platner. It turns out she wasn't fine with that, right? Don't throw a majority report under the bus. I'm never going to throw a majority report under the bus. I'm not going to throw Kyle Kalinske under the bus. I think it's important to recognize blind spots, myself included. Having said that, I totally understand why they were in support. A lot of these people that were in support of Graham Platner were also in support of Kamala Harris in ways that were far more meaningful than, my assessment of that race, right? They were doing harm reduction and lesser evil voting arguments. This is consistent with their principle, right? If someone is going to do harm reduction arguments for Kamala Harris, then of course they're going to make, of course they're going to be in the tank for Graham Platner. FD was in support of Kamala too. Yeah. Did you not hear him literally also do? Yes. FD Signifier is also a harm reductionist. Okay. He literally said, look, you're going to vote for Graham Platner. Just don't make him the face of the movement. That's all he's saying. And I think a lot of people don't listen to the nuanced criticism here. he is quite literally saying, look, if you're going to vote for Graham Platner, that's fine. But like, there's obviously a lot of red flags, and you shouldn't make him the face of a movement. You shouldn't be giving him this much coverage. You know what I mean? I think you didn't go as hard on him as the same reason people get scammed because you wanted it to be true. Of course I wanted him to be the base, like, commie former veteran that is like anti-imperialist, but he's like hiding his fucking he's hiding how radical he is. Turns out he was hiding his real experiences, just not in the direction that I hoped he was. But once again, the skepticism still remained. It was something that I wanted to make a personal assessment on. And unfortunately, well, I guess not even unfortunately, I guess I fortunately never had the opportunity to do so, especially considering, holy shit, the amount of cooking that I'd be receiving in this circumstance probably be even harder than that, regardless of the fact that I didn't lend him the same level of support at all. You had chatters in here saying that FD was calling you out for making him the face of the movement. Nobody listens to what they watch anymore, man. I know.
Terrorism happens like every 6 to 18 months in America. And it's impossible to remain in community or struggle with people who don't seem to mind that, who always put themselves first, especially when the struggle isn't about them in the first place. And after half a decade online, I'm tired of seeing this pattern and repeating these same complaints. But the problem is that this entire space has always catered to a specific type of white guy online. And that's what it was built for and what it always probably will be. See, BreadTube emerged as a venue to rehabilitate right-wing edgelords into leftist progressives, all after the rise of the alt-right. It has always had an extremely high tolerance for what Graham Platner is, because he's just like them for real. And while not every aspect of BreadTube has catered to this reformed edgelord Reddit troll archetype, it's clear that this element of the space remains influential and often sets the tone for the space. Because even if these types don't make up the largest part of our audiences, they're almost always the loudest part, always the most online and the most active of the bunch. So let's talk about some drama for a bit. For years, I have not responded to drama publicly. And any drama from other creators whose opinions I don't care about, you haven't heard me talk about it publicly. And the reason for this is people don't care. People don't care about petty squabbles between creators that agree with each other 90% of the time. None of this is really material to any useful action toward a free Palestine or any social issue that you might care about. So rarely do I dedicate time to it.
And also people will couch a lot of content creators, like their entire thing is just their output, right? Which is content. And if they actually swing in the direction of drama, if they start swinging their content in the direction of drama, they start generating a lot of value. They start, generating revenue off of that. And obviously, if they're a political commentator, they can't simply be only the drama channel. So they have to put a layer of political criticism on top of the actual drama that they're engaging in. And there are a lot of people who do this. I try to stay away from this all the time. Unfortunately, YouTube monetizes it. But let's be real. There are a shit ton of content creators. I'm not going to name any fucking names, okay? There are a shit ton of content creators who almost entirely focus on drama, and they simply add a little bit of political shine to it to make it seem like there are serious political disagreements here, and this is a serious advocacy, and these are very important disagreements that must be addressed. When in fact, all they're doing is shit stirring, lying about the background of individuals, and adding a good deal of like click chasing and clickbaiting into the process. Okay.
In a serious sense.
They moralize the drama, and oftentimes the drama is not even about political disagreements. It's about personal grievances that they cannot they cannot simply come out and admit is a personal grievance. You do this too. There's not a single person that I've ever done this to, and as a matter of fact, the evidence of that is even at times when I've agreed with something that Destiny has said. And that motherfucker has spent the last 7 years of his entire life trying to focus every single bit of his political output on doing exactly what I just said. If someone, even if I despise them, if someone is on the right side of an issue, and they come out and it's a broken clock situation, I will say it. Okay. Yeah, you don't do this to Ben Shapiro. Yeah, I don't.
Just thrive off drama, and they can't attract an audience otherwise. I am not one of those creators. So I want to apologize up front to the vast majority of people who will watch this and have no clue where this is coming from. But with that in mind, I won't be naming names. And to be clear, a lot of the things I'm going to say aren't going to be intended explicitly towards a few people. And it's more so me responding to a problem I've been seeing forever in the space as a whole. But before I even go there, let me clarify some things. I am unequivocally a supporter of a free Palestine. I see Palestine as a colonized nation, and no, I do not think Israel has a right to exist because it is an imperial project and cannot exist as anything but an imperial project. I do not even condemn Hamas. And I've had this stance on decolonization for years. If you pay attention, I don't know if this is a shocking thing to hear me say. It's only that probably if you haven't been paying attention, but a lot of y'all only, we'll get there. You cannot put limitations on how colonized people fight their oppressors. So no, I won't condemn Hamas the same way I wouldn't condemn the Mau Maus in Kenya or the Nat Turner slave rebellions or the Haitian Revolution or the IRA in Ireland. All of these entities were called terrorists at the time of their existence by their oppressors, and all are recognized as liberation movements today, despite the ugliness those movements may have existed in. And I believe Hamas will eventually be seen in the same light. I would love if violence didn't have to occur. And there are anti-colonial movements that do happen to occur with minimal violence, but it's not fair to call any anti-colonial violence senseless, because it is a direct response to the condition that the colonized are living under. And the thing to keep in mind is that Palestinians didn't just start getting genocided by Israel on October 7, 2023. Now, I've seen people say that I've said nothing about the genocide in 3 years, and those people do not watch me. I've expressed my support for Palestine in multiple videos across multiple channels. One thing I'm really interested in with Palestine right now is because there's very obviously bad faith actors trying to involve themselves on all sides of the issue. Oh shit, it's 4,000 people in here. What the fuck? Let's talk about Palestine, motherfuckers. There are students across the country at college campuses protesting and putting their personal lives and futures in jeopardy for free Palestine. There are professors getting arrested and detained right up the street from where I live at this point, at Emory University. Limbaugh's a racist, Glenbeck is a racist, Gaza Strip was getting bombed, Obama didn't say shit. Lupe Fiasco, one of the biggest rappers in the world, low-key say free Palestine way back in 2011, yes, he did. But my content is made for Black people, and the people I'm talking about usually are not Black. And so some of these newfound critics will just lie and say I've been silent, and this is being used to paint me as a person who is both sizing a genocide or a liberal Zionist or a philo-Semite. I have very purposely never presented myself as a key voice on Palestine, which I don't think anyone sincerely is asking me for. But that has allowed for, I'll say, unprincipled people to make up narratives about my position when I dare to say something as bold as,
hey, maybe don't use Nazi dog whistles because you had a disagreement with someone on Twitter.
And instead of acknowledging that reasonable and extremely low bar of decency in this space, folks would rather accuse me of being a liberal Zionist. And I think the only reason why this FD doesn't care about Palestine narrative has gotten legs, because I didn't make a definitive FD Signifier Palestine video on my main channel. And some may see that as a lack of conviction, so let me clear that up as well. First, I want to engage with this idea that a video on Palestine would have been bad for my channel in some form or fashion. And this is just not based in reality. In fact, the opposite is true. Palestine videos, especially 2 years ago, were very popular. Sean's Palestine video 2 years ago is the second most watched video of the last 5 years. And even today, videos on the genocide can pull in good views. You never know how the
How much longer does he talk about like his own personal background? Because I know FD's takes. I know his position on this. He's just like addressing the drama, and I don't know if it's like pertinent to the conversation that we're having about Graham Platner. And you guys should watch the video. I mean, it already got almost 500,000 views. Is the rest of it just drama, like related, where he's just like discussing his perspective in general? What are you looking for? I'll give you a timestamp. Oni, oh yeah, Oni edited this. Oni, is the rest of it not about Platner? Racism isn't drama. No, racism isn't drama. But he's talking about the racist attacks that he's receiving, and I'm watching this video specifically on his accurate assessment on his accurate assessment on Graham Platner, the red flags, and why a lot of people don't see it. A lot of people stream on here just watching you. I don't get why they even stream. What? I don't know. Like,
multinational data mining platform so they could advertise AI girlfriends and PragerU in between me talking about political prisoners and black revolutionaries. It's just felt gross. Further, in the aftermath, I was somehow branded as a prison reform expert. Like, I remember having people reach out to me to play themselves, but don't tell
Oni says, like, go back to 21.
people to make up for his past sins. And my rehab is, trying to say distorted, and you literally cannot fix it. I know that a lot of these white leftists have zero shame, zero self-awareness, and zero interest in actual coalition building on this platform if it means they might have to decenter themselves. And that brings me back to Platner. Platner is popular because he's BreadTube personified. He is the former edgelord rehabilitated into the hero for oppressed people to make up for his past sins. And mind you, every piece of anti-colonial liberation theory that you will ever read will tell you that the colonized must free themselves, but don't tell that to your favorite BreadTuber or favorite BreadTube fan, because they'll swear that it's them that's the key to liberation for insert other group here. But further, Platner shows the failure of the American left presenting a principled anti-Zionist stance to a larger general public. I've noticed in my personal life and online that there's been a rise in what I'm going to describe as America First anti-Zionism. And normally when I make up a new term, I want credit for it, but please do not repeat. I'm positive there is somebody more worthy, some actual Palestinian scholar that is saying the exact same thing I'm saying. So find them and give them credit for that term. But Platner is a perfect example of what that is.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is this: we are all victim to our environment, okay? And what we see and what we do, it shapes our reality, it shapes our worldview, and sometimes we end up engaging in analysis that might betray a broader systemic factor that's not being seen. I will stand by the notion that I have over and over again, that I've repeated over and over again. Graham Platner is not a product of the online left. Graham Platner was hand-selected by, I guess, the fight agency. But having said that, what made Graham Platner popular was not the online left. The online left, Majority Report, myself, if you consider me to be a major booster of Graham Platner, Pod Johns, these people have a lot of influence. But they cannot make or break elections, no matter how big or small. Graham Platner became a national figure because people in Maine voted for him. Liberals in Maine voted for him. And this is very important to identify and understand. We have to recognize this, because that is who voted for Graham Platner, and that's who might even still to this day want Graham Platner to remain in the race. Okay? I don't think Graham Platner was carried into victory by BreadTubers or Majority Report or myself or any number of different people, right? Unless you personally think, if your argument is, Hassan, you've done Graham Platner, you're the reason why Graham Platner ran, you're the reason why this issue is happening. You found him, you hand selected him, you work for the fight agency, whatever, right? If that's your assessment, and there are some who are maybe leaning into that direction a little bit, okay? What you have to remember is, do you think I have, or do you think Majority Report has captivated the minds of every 65-plus-year-old college-educated white suburbanite in Maine? Do you think that's the reason why Graham Platner is successful? Because they were all locked in on the Majority Report? Or do you think that there was genuine momentum behind his candidacy at a time when people were looking for someone to express their left populist rage? Okay? The reason why this is very important, to identify, is because the replacement has to, in some way, shape, or form, embody that left populist rage. Because if that doesn't happen, a lot of people are going to be very frustrated and they're not going to vote, and they're going to think, oh, they rat fucked him. And I think that there are a lot of people in Maine that probably don't even want him to drop out. We've seen that. On Twitter, everyone's like, Graham Platner, you got to drop out. On Blue Sky, they're doing victory laps. Okay. But on Instagram, on Facebook, where the normies are, they fucking love Graham. On TikTok comments, people are saying, you shouldn't drop out, King. This is an Israel concocted narrative. Okay. They're saying that shit's fake. Politicians are calling him to drop out, but the voters are saying remain in the race, King. Okay. That's important. That's important to understand. That's important to identify. I'm not saying this is correct. I'm not saying this is good. Okay. What I'm saying is this. That's how much legitimacy he was able to garner. That's how much there is an appetite for a change candidate that people, paired up with their lack of interest due to patriarchal constructs, their lack of interest in recognizing a rape victim when they see one, right? And the amount of influencing power a white man has, the amount of Teflon that a white male candidate clearly has, especially when they come from a veteran background where people are just like, that's my fucking guy. I will ride into the depths of hell. That's why I've said, ironically enough, this is the true liberal Trump, okay? This is the true liberal Trumpian candidacy that we have to take note. We have to take note of where the success came from, and we have to factor that into who the replacement should be.
Because while he does claim to want to stop aid from Israel, he also wants to improve military recruitment. So he is not against American imperialism like you might think, which undermines any anti-Israeli stance he holds. And that's typical of pretty much all the Democrats right now. The sad reality is that the Democratic Party and the alleged progressive leaders in America have allowed themselves to be outmaneuvered on Zionism by the likes of Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, unlike anti-Zionists on the left, are in fact obvious anti-Semites. Tucker Carlson is a crypto white supremacist who has spent years trying to normalize the Great Replacement theory, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is a former QAnon adherent who brought us Jewish space lasers and believes in blood light. Yet both are being mainstreamed in a way that I wouldn't have thought possible just a few years ago. People like Carlson and Green have infinitely more reach and influence than any of your favorite bread tubers, and thus they have been able to frontline this American first anti-Zionism, and it's become a popular position. It feels like for the first time ever, and this is a good thing, and I'll explain why in a second, anti-Zionism is a popular sentiment to hold, but anti-Zionism that is America first is letting America off the hook for its role in that genocide. I've had a lot of people, both online and in my encounters in real life, smart people, say something along the lines of, Israel is controlling America, and no, the tail does not wag the dog. Israel is a settler colonial project built on genocide and mass murder. America is a settler colonial project built on genocide and mass murder, among other things. Game recognized game. There are, of course, Zionists in American government and plenty of Zionists who are at the helm of powerful American institutions. And our current president does seem uniquely compromised in his ability to not be influenced, not just by Israel, but everyone. Like, everybody gets a piece of our president. But please believe that confluence of power between Israel and Zionists in America is not some secret, like, mystical thing. That's just how power and capitalists have always worked. One example of this America first anti-Zionism is, like, people often say America was forced or tricked into a war with Iran due to Israel, but this ignores the history of hostility that America has had with Iran. Iran, as a sovereign, strong nation, has been able to withstand American influence and thus impedes on America's dominance of that region and the resources that Iran controls, even with Israel sitting at Iran's doorstep. And Israel, because of its Zionist nature, has always wanted to attack Iran, along with everyone else in that region for years. But for the longest, America has not allowed them to, because most American presidents fully understood that we probably can't win a war with Iran, which, if you're paying attention, is clearly correct. But that doesn't mean that we didn't desire to do the exact same thing Israel did. This is why you see so many other American politicians wanting more action from America in Iran, low-key on both sides of the aisle. America has not just allowed, but has encouraged Israel to be exactly what it is for decades at this point. It's just that this time around, Palestinians were able to show the world what is happening to them. And I want to be clear, Palestinians do not care and should not care how they get free or who in America is going to bring them to that point. If they get free because of a right-wing regime ushered in by Tucker Carlson decides to act on their innate hatred of Jewish people and pull support from Israel, that's an us problem. That's not a them problem. There's a great short essay from Laith Marouf, again, I apologize if I got that wrong, where he's responding to a recent interview where Norm Finkelstein basically says exactly what I'm saying here. But Marouf comes back to reiterate that none of that is the Palestinians' concern. Marouf says literally, why is it so hard to believe that America first could actually be Israel last? So if the left, and by that, I don't just mean us here on YouTube, although we are somewhat to blame, if the left can't present a crystal clear principled stance against Zionism to combat the nationalistic and ultimately fascist version that's taking a hold everywhere, including somewhat on the left, then we're fucked and we deserve it.
I don't like how Hassan is framing the situation as the online left has no responsibility in platforming Platner in a positive way, regardless of how Maine voters voted. It's just a lack of accountability. It's my least favorite statement. It's my least favorite word. And I know people will clip this and be like, oh, yeah, see, he hates accountability. It just doesn't mean anything. Okay? It just doesn't mean anything. Like, what do you mean? Like, I say it too at times. But like, what does it mean? What would accountability look like? Like, what would you want me to do? What would you want, I don't know, like Majority Report to do? Because I saw pieces of Emma's takes earlier where she did hold herself accountable. Like she said, look, I apologize. I was duped by this person to a certain degree. I really pushed for this person. But like in my situation, it's like, what do you want me to not cover the fucking Maine Senate race at all? Calling out the Nazi tattoo. Why did so many people minimize that? Wait, but I did do that. So what I did numerous tweets, numerous extensive hours of coverage. So what do you want me to do about that? Like answer clearly. Use your words. Like what would you like me to do about that? That was actually a big part of my criticism as well. So I think for a lot of people it turns into for a lot of people, it basically turns into like this whole thing where it's like, I want you to satisfy my needs. Like I'm watching this video because there were red flags that I myself also overlooked in terms of in an effort to maintain some kind of like stable left populist momentum, right? Not overlooked necessarily because I did bring them up, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, fuck this guy. And if you're asking me to say, fuck this guy, when the alternative was Susan Collins or Janet Mills, I wasn't going to do that, right? There is a level of buildup that we had to reach for me to say that, okay? Does that make sense? I mean, this is something that I've made, I think, very clear. Something that I've made very clear over and over again is that like there is a level of like accusation pile on. Especially where it's coming from is also important because a lot of these accusations weren't just coming from the anti-imperialist left flank, some of the ultras in this community, some of the wreckers in this community who were actually saying unhinged things, as opposed to like reasonable critique. But yeah, I mean, this is me talking about his tattoo. You know what, Platter being a Nazi? Yes, of course I'll be speaking about that as well. Dude, you think this community is going to let me live that down? Are you kidding me? My most ethical voting decision in Maine. It is to me, okay? I've already made my most... So I think people are rightfully mad that you dismissed the New York Times allegations, especially considering Rascott is mentioned in the name in the article. No, I stand by that. You actually did defend the tattoo at the time, but there isn't anything I or any of us should demand you do. I stand by that. The New York Times report. Should we go back to the New York Times reporting on Rasico? And no, I did not defend the Nazi tattoo. Should we go back and read the New York Times report on Rasico? Do you guys want to go through that again? Because the New York Times literally said it was worrying. That's it. That Rasico had a troublesome. The New York Times report said Rasico had a troublesome experience. They did not put down the credible accusations of rape that Rasico made in the Politico report. If the New York Times, as a matter of fact, ironically enough, at the time I said, if the New York Times report had a credible accusation of rape, that would be an irredeemable red line. I don't think you remember my coverage of the New York Times report. And it wasn't just even about Rasko. I said that there was a Republican operative, right, Fifield, who had made accusations, the primary accusations of the New York Times report anchored around. And those accusations, according to the New York Times own assessment, did not reach that standard. According to Fifield's own assessment, did not reach that same standard. And at the time I said, look, regardless of whether Fifield is a Republican operative or not, if she had contemporaneous conversations at the time with a serious accusation of rape, then that would be the red line. That would be considered irredeemable. I was very clear on this. It wouldn't even matter that she is a Republican operative at that point because that would be a red line. That would be an irredeemable red line. Hold on. Sorry. In any case, this was the white fatigue.
Clear here
FD
is that
streams.
Rob, myself, Sean DeBlack, a lot of other black folks, we have explained this to y'all before. That's the real black fatigue. That, like, literally, that is what black fatigue actually is black folks being tired of having.
He literally had rape allegations before this. Why are we being obtuse now? No, he didn't. He did not. What are you talking about? I said what I said, y'all. This was a blind spot for y'all in the space. I'm speaking from my experience as a black man who sees shit like this and understand why the space struggles with POC. Where is the rape allegation? No. You can say you were skeptical because you've seen, charismatic white men dupe a lot of people. That's fair. That's what FD Signifier's assessment is. Okay. But you can't say there was already like credible rape allegations and people just overlooked it. Where were the credible rape allegations? You can't just like drop that in here. The Politico article that actually solidified this reporting unironically also reported that there were no rape allegations against Graham Platner up until that reporting. Up until yesterday, up until 24 hours ago, there were no credible rape allegations or rape allegations at all. So where are you coming from with this?
Having to explain racism to white people. Let's get into this nonsense. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So I haven't actually watched any of the coverage. I've just seen the aftermath.
Okay, this is 48 minutes long, and it's just the stream comp, right? I'll wait for a cleaned up version of this. But I will be watching the debate live. Whoever said Platner was the face of the movement, that's Mamdani in my head. Yeah. As a black woman who's skeptical of him the whole time, he did not have rape allegations. As soon as the New York Times article came out, I knew it was coming. I knew he likely did it during his time terrorizing people in the Middle East. It needs to be okay for people to say, I found out more information, I was wrong. I'll be more cautious in the future. Yeah. Well, that's why I'm watching the FD Signifier video, right? Anyway, Zora Mamdani was asked about Graham Platner earlier today, and he, of course, also said that Graham Platner should drop out, obviously.
To ask, given that you have a sort of ascendant role in the Democratic Party, could you talk about the Maine Senate race? Do you think that Graham Platner should drop out of the race? And do you have any intention of endorsing any candidates in competitive races outside of New York, El Said, or anyone else?
No, I believe that it's time for him to drop out of the race. And when it comes to my own endorsements, I've made 8 endorsements at the state and federal level. They've all been right here in New York City. I'm incredibly excited at the fact that they won their races, and that's where my focus is for now.
This motherfucker's always got some shit to say and drip to wear, okay? I'm sick and tired of it. I'll say it. I'm sick and tired of it. You got to redistribute the drip, my man. You can't just be wearing the drip just by yourself, all on your own lonesome, okay? What kind of socialism is this shit? What kind of socialism is this shit? It turns out I am now a reactionary conservative. It turns out they were right. Okay, it turns out they were fucking right. The Republicans were right. Socialism only means the tippy top gets the drip. Nobody else. Yeah, drip for me, not for thee.
I think the focus of today should be to respond to the gravity of what so many of us have read. And I think that the only appropriate response is for the campaign to come to an end.
We turn now to a stunning new allegation rocking a pivotal contest for the U.S. Senate in November. Maine Democratic nominee Graham Platner is accused of rape by a woman he once dated, a claim Platner denies. At least 13 Democrats are now calling on Platner to drop out of the race. Caitlin Huey-Burns is on Capitol Hill. Caitlin, good morning.
Good morning to you, Natalie. Well, Graham Platner is vigorously denying this allegation, but he did say he is taking time to reflect on the path forward. And Democrats in Maine and across the country are calling on him to drop out ahead of a key ballot deadline just days away.
Graham Platner, once considered a rising star in the Democratic Party, now facing an allegation of sexual assault from a woman he alleged to have dated 5 years ago. Jenny Rassicott told Politico she first met Platner in 2019 and that their relationship...
Isn't it fucking weird that there wasn't this level of outrage from people like Shannon Watts and Neera Tanden and Eric Swalwell? I wonder why. Yeah, because for the record, Neera Tanden is a massive Clinton booster. She worked with the Clintons her whole life, okay? They don't give a shit about rape allegations if it's their guy. We care about it, right? They don't have any fucking consistency. Get the hell out of here. What are we doing? They rode for Andrew Cuomo against Zohran Mamdani. Speaking of Zohran Mamdani, new AP polling on Jewish Americans. Mamdani, 44% favorable, 39% unfavorable. Mamdani is at a +5 with American Jews. Netanyahu is at a -27 with American Jews. And Trump is at a -42 with American Jews. Interesting. Yeah. Replace Zohran Mamdani with the word Israel, and it's not so funny, is it? That's right. Replace the name Zohran Mamdani with anti-Semitism, and all of a sudden, you see a very different picture. Not so funny, is it? How about that? 30% of Jewish adults say Israel has committed genocide, although about half, 49%, say it has not. This is being base boosted generationally. Easy explanation. 30% of those surveyed are imbeciles, this guy says. How crazy is it that about 1/3 of Americans in massive erosion? AP NORC poll, about 3 in 10 U.S. adults believe Israel has committed a genocide against the Palestinians. Devastating numbers, by the way, for the truth. Devastating numbers. Americans are still, by and large, the most propagandized population. Like North Korea levels, straight up. Like what we perceive as happening in North Korea is unironically happening in America. And it's far more sinister in some respects because it's not so like direct and deliberate and flagrant, right? It's just like people genuinely think that there is no propaganda that's at play here, which makes it somehow more insidious. Also, speaking of propaganda, we haven't carried the flame in a couple days. We're at level 3 on the hype train right now. If you want to carry the flame, please subscribe, which you can do for $6 or for free. Okay, you can subscribe for $6 or for free, or by gifting a sub. Level 3 hype train at level 10 hype train. We carry the flame as always. Let's continue.
Was consensual until one night in 2021 when she alleges Platner came to her home uninvited, forced her to have sex after she repeatedly told him to stop. She told Politico Platner was, quote, almost blackout drunk and said, quote, I remember the specific moment where I thought to myself, like, this is no longer my choice. In a separate interview with CNN, Rassicott claimed she feared for her safety.
He violated multiple layers of consent that night by coming into my home.
What are you doing?
When I asked him not to, and by advancing on me when I told him not to.
Platner, after postponing campaign events in recent days, responded in a video Monday afternoon.
I wanted to directly address the troubling, serious, and false allegations against me. Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorical.
Here's another thing that we found out, okay? You know how we found out that, there is no like real viable constituency of anti-Israel, anti-war sentiment on the right? You know how like simply being anti-Israel is not going to carry to a victory if Donald Trump is against you, as we saw with the Thomas Massie equation? There is no liberal Trump, at least for the time being, okay? Because this is the liberal Trump moment. And the liberal voters, in my opinion, will probably crater in their support for Graham Platner after this accusation. And therefore, turns out you can't have a serious rape accusation as a liberal that is also an outsider too, when the institutions are not defending you, when the institutions have their knives out for you anyway. You're not going to be able to pull a Trump, okay? You're not going to be able to pull a Trump, which I don't think is a bad thing, for the record. I just want to state my position on this. It's not a bad thing. That is a good thing. New York Times reporting that backs up your claims about the viewpoint of Maine voters. Of the nearly 24 Democrats interviewed in the state on Tuesday, most said they expected Mr. Platner to drop out of the race. Most said it was the right course. His ideas were great, but he has way too much baggage now, said John Murray, 80 years old, a retired mail carrier from Saco. But several, including Mr. Murray, said they would probably stick with Mr. Platner, 41, if he opted to remain on the ballot. The deadline for the candidate to formally withdraw from the race is Monday. We'd vote for a swamp frog or anyone to defeat Susan Collins, Mr. Murray said. Is it even fair to say that someone should have known this would happen? I mean, the only people I think that should have known this would happen were the people who did not sufficiently and thoroughly investigate Graham Platner's background. Let's be real. I think a lot of people that saw Graham Platner deliver a speech in a very convincing manner they fell in love with him. They were like, this guy has unbelievable talent in comparison to what Maine normally has. He has the look, the build, the CV that is, obviously not great for our perspective, but certainly something that Mainers responded positively to. And that was it. Because I don't see any reason why people try to make it seem as though like Graham Platner was not an effective communicator. I don't know why people make this argument for some reason. Like he, as I've said time and time again, regardless of skepticism or scrutiny, very clearly was connecting with Maine voters. And the reason why he was able to do that is because he was a very effective communicator. That's it. Yeah, coming out of the gate swinging with a Bernie endorsement day one, obviously frame one also helped him. But guess what, guys? It didn't help him as much as it helped, or it didn't help Abdul El-Sayed in the same way. This was always a tale of two races from my perspective. And I always made that comparison. Abdul El-Sayed also started early. Abdul El-Sayed also started frame one with a Bernie endorsement. And yet Abdul El-Sayed did not get the national attention until Haley Stevens and Mallory McMorrow, more importantly than Haley Stevens, came out and started yelling at Abdul El-Sayed because he had made at the time they thought it was an unwise decision. Turns out it was a very wise decision. Made the decision to campaign alongside a dangerous radical like myself. That's when that campaign became a national campaign. That's when people started paying close attention to Abdul El-Sayed. So why is it that Abdul El-Sayed did not get that national recognition? That is ironically what FD Signifier was pointing to. Is Abdul not charismatic? Of course he is. And on top of that, he had the background. He had the experience. So why did he not get the same recognition? Two candidates, two Senate races. What gives? He is no Platner in regards to charisma. I think you're wrong. Are you kidding me? He's great. Have you listened to his stump speech? It's fantastic. It's just as exciting as Graham Platner's is. This is also the Abdul story, though he had started with a leg up because he'd run before and had a different resume. Town halls everywhere, making himself much more available and visible to Dems than Stevens. McMorrow did this too. It just didn't work as well. No, I disagree with David a little bit, with Weigel a little bit. Okay? I think a large part of Platner's success in the primary, beyond expressing what his mainstream Dem view on Gaza, was holding town halls, laying out his views, and answering questions after questions. It's rare for polls to do that. He did that 80 plus. Agreed. But so did Abdul. So why was Abdul's chances nowhere near as good as Graham Platner's was? I think it's because a lot of people don't pay attention to radical candidates that embody that carry that populist rage in their attitude, in their policy, when those candidates aren't white guys. It's true. This was my primary point that I made over and over again. And there are still racist motherfuckers in the centrist democratic forces, the pro-Israel forces, that are trying to say Abdul doesn't have the juice, saying that Abdul doesn't have the credentials, the background. He has too many red flags, they say. What are those red flags? We ask what those red flags are, and there's never a decent answer for it beyond taking the long road home to say he's Muslim and brown. Okay? That's it. That's it. Anyway, let's get back to the story.
False.
The oyster farmer and Marine veteran is no
He's very phalennial coded, to be fair. Abdul, yes, but that's not a negative. That's a positive. I mean, Zoran was too. This is the age of the phalennial, folks. while I find some of those instincts to be cringy, I think wine moms have a very different attitude. Okay? Let's be real. Zoran did a good number, a good deal of phillennial stuff as well. I think it is absolutely the age of the phillennial.
Stranger to controversies during his primary
For good reason, we're skipping generation lead poisoning.
campaign, he faced scrutiny over a tattoo he later covered up after critics said it resembled a Nazi symbol and claims of toxic behavior from alleged previous romantic partners. Platner has denied those allegations, but said during that time he had been struggling with undiagnosed PTSD and was self-medicating with alcohol.
Regardless of the inaccuracy of the reporting, but mindful of the political reality it will inflict, we are taking the time to reflect on the best path forward.
Now, this is one of those key races that could help determine which party has control of the U.S. Senate. And the pressure is building here on Platner to drop out. Get this. He has until July 13th to drop out of the race. And then the state Democratic Party in Maine could pick his replacement to take on longtime incumbent Republican Senator Susan Collins in November. Gail.
Well, July 13th is next week. The clock is ticking. Thank you, Caitlin. CBS News political contributor, and Democratic strategist, that's Joel Payne, joins us now from Washington. Joel, many Democrats who stood by him are now saying he's got to go. Elizabeth Warren, Ro Khanna. And then some are looking at the Democrats and saying, why did it take this for you all to finally say he's got to go? What do you think is going to happen now?
Well, look, the hill is very high for Platner to scale to stay in the race. Not just national Democrats are speaking out against him, but a lot of local voices. The Maine Democratic Party, some members of the Maine congressional delegation have called for Platner to step aside. And look, these allegations are damning and they're serious. And I think that what a lot of Democrats are wrestling with right now is how did we get here? I think we got here because a candidate caught fire and really built a brand in the state.
This guy's a smaller head than you. I think is really inappropriate that you guys have this kind of attitude every time someone has broad shoulders. Okay? I think it's messed up. You guys see a broad-shouldered individual and you immediately assume that their head size is tiny. It's not. Okay? It's not the case. This is a perspective issue. Okay? And it's a significant issue and I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of it. Okay? What is this? Glad you finally got your first lead acting. Wide shoulders equals wide bed from my husband's short film. Okay, this might be literally age restricted. I'm not going to watch it.
And really built trust with voters. This is not a candidate who is someone who was placed in this position by national donors or national influencers. This is someone who really caught on locally. And when you have that and you have an
Thank God someone is making that assessment. Jesus Christ. It's definitely one that is unfortunately lost in the tit-for-tat shit slinging battle that's been taking place over the last 24 hours of this news cycle. Everyone has taken this credible rape accusation and has used it to pull out their I told you so's back and forth when no one, for some fucking weird reason, one, understands the significance of this, the significance of this problem, right, for the Senate majority, because the Senate majority means investigations, accountability, hurdles in front of the Trump administration, right? Like that's an absolute necessity. I cannot stress this enough, okay? And the other problem is that if you don't recognize what forces gave Graham Platner his national prominence, if you simply think it's like, leftist Carhartt wearing phonies who know what the working class truly is, if you think that that's the case, then you're failing to comprehend the hundreds of thousands of Mainers that voted for him from not that background, right? It's incredibly stupid. All that remains for Graham Platner is to make the reasonable and considerate choice and not follow his own short-sighted, selfish desires. Imagine getting rid of your Nazi tattoo for nothing. Bro's probably pissed. He's like, dude, that's my emotional support Nazi tattoo, you fucking asshole.
Untested candidate who's never been vetted nationally. These are the types of things that a lot of Democrats fear could happen.
Well, and he has been leading in the polls against Republican Susan Collins, Joel. And he's already won the primary. But what would the process look like then if the Democrats would choose to go with another candidate? As we said, the clock is ticking. They have until early next week.
Yeah, well, as Caitlin alluded to, he's got until July 13th to decide whether or not to drop out of the race. And then there's a 2-week period until July 27th where local Democrats could choose somebody to replace Platner on the ticket. Now, there are already rumblings of the types of folks who could potentially replace him. Someone like Troy Jackson, who was a Democratic candidate for governor recently, Narav Shah, who's also a candidate for local office, are some of the names. And of course, there's Janet Mills, who Platner defeated in the Democratic primary, who's the sitting governor of the state right now as well. Those are some of the folks who people are discussing. I think what's challenging here for Democrats is making sure that if there is a change in candidate on the ballot, that Maine voters are people who have actually the say. This is not a decision that's put upon Maine voters, but this is a decision that comes from Maine voters. And I think that's a priority for a lot of folks who are thinking about what happens next.
All right, Joel Payne, thank you.
A woman who dated Maine U.S. Senate candidate Graham Platner.
What happens if, one, he doesn't drop out? Does he still win or lose by a landslide? Two, what happens if they put a centrist Democrat back in the race? I suspect that he's using the threat of staying in the race to make sure that they don't fucking navigate. The centrist Democrats don't put like a fucking dog shit candidate who will literally lose the support of the ground. Like, I cannot stress this enough. Look, it doesn't matter. This is not about Graham Platner, right? He's out. That's clear. But if the Democrats come in and they're like, well, it's Janet Mills time, I cannot begin to explain to you how bad that will be, because it'll be a twofer. One, a lot of people that voted for Graham Platner will not vote for Janet Mills because they voted against Janet Mills. They voted for Graham Platner. Okay? Like, I cannot, dude, this is unique. My unique fresh hell, okay? My unique fresh hell, specifically because this is not one, but two different Kamala Harris 2.0 situations. And maybe even a taste of Hillary Rodham Clinton. Okay, fuck, my hair is out of control. Because there's two scenarios here, both in Maine and Michigan, where the Democrats are salivating at the fucking prospect of pulling another operation where they just do a no primary, hand-selected Democratic establishment candidate. Okay? That's what's going on here. Terrifying prospect. Terrifying prospect. New York had his back, baby. Yeah. Anyway, let's take a look at Senator Bernie Sanders.
After a woman came forward in recent hours accusing Maine Senate candidate Graham Platner in a 2021 sexual assault, several top Democrats asking Platner to get out of the race. And now we're hearing from Senator Bernie Sanders.
Wait, did something happen with Abdul? No, they're just trying to use the Platner situation to fucking shit sling at Abdul. It's insane. But they are literally trying to put Haley Stevens in there, who's basically Hillary Rodham Clinton, basically Kamala Harris. Both of these people lost Michigan to Trump. Okay.
Vermont independent senator who confirms he got on the phone to talk to Platner today and asked Platner to step aside. The new allegations reported by Politico and CNN made by Jenny Rassicoat. She's a 41-year-old woman who dated Platner 5 years ago, claims he forced her to have sex despite objecting.
He violated multiple layers of consent that night by coming into my home when I asked him not to, and by advancing on me when I told him not to.
So let's talk about it live to CBS News political director Finn Gomez in Washington. Any response from Team Platner yet?
No, not yet. As of we do know that, after the story first broke, Platner issued a statement Monday denying the new allegations from his former romantic partner, Jenny Rassicoat, calling them, quote, categorically false, and issued a campaign video soon after the story first broke. Platner called the allegations, quote, troubling, serious, and false in a statement, and said accusations of non-consensual behavior as categorically untrue. The candidate went on to post a video to social media after the story broke. Take a listen.
Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically false, regardless of the inaccuracy of the reporting, but mindful of the political reality it will inflict. We are taking the time to reflect on the best path forward for the state that I love, the people that I love, the movement I belong to, and the goal of defeating Susan Collins.
He also acknowledged what he called the political reality surrounding the accusation, Reed, which I find notable. He's saying it's time to reflect on the best path forward. He didn't say he's dropping out there, but he's also stopped short of saying he's going to stay in the race, in which in turn fueled speculation because Maine law gives Democrats only until next Monday, July 13th, for Platner to withdraw if they want to replace him on the general election ballot to face incumbent Republican Senator Susan Collins, who's running for a 6th term.
And the hope, of course, by Democrats is to regain Congress and flip the balance of power in Congress. And this is a really crucial race. So what's the status of the race now? Let's play this out. Say Platner pulls out of the race. What happens next?
Well, look, I mean, right after the news first broke, top Democrats, including Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand, concluded the situation in Maine had fundamentally changed, that the situation had changed there. Even early backers like progressive Congressman Ro Khanna, who campaigned with them last month, and Senators Martin Heinrich and Elizabeth Warren, who were close to Platner, had dropped their support. And now, as you mentioned, Senator Bernie Sanders, a top backer, weighed in and said that he has spoken with Platner about the best path forward for Maine in light of these very serious allegations, and he has recommended that he step aside. Also notable, Reed, that New York City Mayor Mamdani also said today that Platner should lead the race. Many Democrats I spoke to believe that the writing's on the wall here, and it's a long list of Democrats from establishment to the progressive wing who essentially no longer believe the progressive populist candidate can beat Susan Collins, who is running, who was once considered one of the most vulnerable Republicans this cycle. And again, if Platner withdraws by the state's July 13th deadline, Maine Democrats can choose a replacement nominee through the party process rather than holding another vote. Voters would not be involved. They have up until July 27th to make that replacement. Then that replacement, of course, would then face Collins in November. And remember, as you mentioned, why does this seat matter so much? Why does Maine matter so much? It's because Democrats view Maine as one of their best pickup opportunities, Reed, as they try to regain control of the Senate. Maine is a must-win for them. And there's some new developing news. According to the Bangor Daily News, former Maine Senate President Troy Jackson, a progressive, has filed with the FEC on today to form a Senate Exploratory Committee, becoming the first Democrat to formally campaign for that spot, according to the paper, if Platner appears to, if he vacates his nomination.
And has a clock to beat to do that. CBS News political director Finn Gomez. This is yet another one to watch. Glad you've got your glasses on, Finn. Thank you so much.
President Trump is in Turkey right now. He said this morning he will.
Oh, yeah. All right. Now let's get to Benjamin Netanyahu, the true president of the United States of America. Platner can now run and win the pedophilic elite with Trump's camp. Platner isn't Fetterman, but he's fucking the Democrats just the same. I know. Yeah, the Platner is John Fetterman conversation. I didn't really agree with, because John Fetterman is not John Fetterman pre-stroke. Okay, like I don't know why people always try to like tie this stuff together, and I think people will obviously continue doing that. Like I've seen some people say, "Oh, you were wrong on Fetterman. You're wrong on Graham Platner." Like I've acknowledged that the red flags with John Fetterman, I thought, were just him trying to avoid the money cannon from AIPAC. I have mentioned that because I knew that he was like shaky on Israel, but a lot of people, myself included, made the assessment that he's probably just trying to not get attacked nonstop, you know? But as far as John Fetterman goes, like John Fetterman literally has gone back on fundamental planks of his policy platform that pertain to his personal existence. Undocumented migration, for example. His wife is an undocumented immigrant. His wife was an undocumented immigrant. He was very pro-immigrant. John Fetterman post-stroke is literally pro-ICE. The idea that, bro, he said he changed and opposes rape now, why don't we just forgive him? I like that. I know what you're trying to do here. I know what you're trying to say here, right? Like, I think redemption, even for someone like that, is possible. It's just that he has done nothing of the sort, okay? He's done nothing of the sort. And I know you're going to turn around and say, well, what has he done for redemption in terms of American militarism or whatever? He's talked about his experience and how stupid all of it was and how it was for nothing. He's denying it. Like, I don't know why people I don't know why people always fucking make it seem like Graham Platner was running around and being like, I loved the experience. I know that he has said something similar in his Reddit posts from many years ago, but when he was running a campaign, he wasn't like, I loved waging war. It was the best most exciting, and the best thing. I want to send more people to go and fucking murder people overseas. Like that wasn't his output at all. As a matter of fact, if that was his output, I think people would probably be a little grossed out by it. You know? I mean, yes, he did low. No, he didn't. No, he did not. He did not. He said he joined for adventure. And after his buddies died, and you can also get mad about that too. You can be like, well, he only cared about it when, he personally experienced the death and destruction, and that's selfish. And I agree with you. Okay. And you can talk about the inconsistency between saying like, oh, I really didn't like this experience, but then I fucking joined Blackwater in 2018, which is true. Right. That's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous claim. It's an inconsistency that I wanted to personally address. His campaign did not want to do this interview. But the idea that he was running actively on how awesome, like you're making it seem like it was hoorah. The Iraq War was great. Nothing to reflect on. It's awesome. And everyone should do it. It's just, like, yeah, he had a lot of red flags. Part of the reason why I, pointed out the red flags, but did not say that it was completely irredeemable up until now, I've made it very clear, is because of the electability, the electioneering, the unfortunate chess piece that he was in the Senate majority, including the way he communicated on the issue of Israel, on Medicare for all, and numerous other very good policies, which, for the record, are unbelievably popular in Maine, as we found out.